Goa, a unique cultural landscape. Goa, state of India, comprising a mainland district on the country's southwestern coast and an offshore island. It is located about 400 kilometers south of Mumbai, one of India's smallest states. The Portuguese colonial heritage and the diverse local population of Goa have cultivated a unique cultural landscape. The population is primarily a mixture of Christians and Hindus. Old Goa, on the island of Goa, was once the hub of the region, but the city was decimated by war and disease in the 18th century. For the most part, only its ruins remain. There are three principal cities in contemporary Goa: Panjim, Marmagao, Mormugão, and Madgaon, Margão. Panji was originally a suburb of Old Goa. Archaeologists have found an old wharf that points to the existence of an ancient port on the Zuari River near Goa, India. They say it may date back 4,500 years and be evidence of early trade on India's central west coast. Researchers hope to discover a port similar to the Lothal city dockyard, which is 4,500 years old, and was discovered by Archaeological Survey of India in Gujarat in 1954. Lothal archaeological site was once one of the most prominent cities of the ancient Indus Valley civilization. A vibrant center of trade in the ancient world, gems, beads and valuable artifacts were traded from as far away as Africa and West Asia. On the left or southern bank of the river Mandovi, at a distance of about 5 miles from its mouth. It has 2 kilometers of river frontage to the north, and occupies a narrow strip of the village of Talagaon, which is bounded on the east by a causeway connecting it with Ribindar, on the south by a hill, and on the west by an esplanade. Panjim with Ribindar and the old city of Goa constitutes the modern capital of Portuguese India, called Nova Goa or New Goa, though this name is commonly applied to Panjim alone. Its population numbered in 1827 about 9,000 souls, in 1851, 9,800, and in 1865, 14,134. At present it is estimated at 1.575 million. In the vernacular dialect of the country it was called Pongi, meaning probably arable land that cannot be inundated. Panjim was once a miserable place full of stagnant pools, and inhabited principally by fishermen and other poor people dwelling in huts. The city was attacked in March 1510 by the Portuguese under Afonso de Albuquerque. The city surrendered without a struggle, and Albuquerque entered it in triumph. 3 months later Yusuf Adil Shah returned with 60,000 troops, forced the passage of the fort, and blockaded the Portuguese in their ships from May to August. During the Mohammedan sway it was only remarkable for the castle of Yusuf Adil Shah, which was then transformed into the viceregal palace. At some distance from it stood a fort or bulwark on the neighboring hill, amidst a dense forest. The history of Goa shows that the state has undergone several transformations as an outcome of a number of dynasties ruling the region. Indo-Parthians, Bhojis, Chalukyas, Kadambas, Yadavas, and Bahamanis all had a hold of Goa from the 1st century BC to 1500 AD. Their rule was ended by the arrival of Vijayanagar Empire in 14th-15th century AD. From which in after years during the Portuguese rule, firewood, according to a document of 1524, was cut and sold. This bulwark was but ill constructed, while the castle was strongly built and defended by 15 guns and a garrison of about 300 soldiers. It was from the castle that the Mohammedans under Yusuf Gurji offered a vigorous resistance to Albuquerque on his first invasion of Goa in 1510, and it was within view of the castle that his fleet lay at anchor during the rainy season following his expulsion from the city by the overwhelming forces of the king of Bijapur. Vasco da Gama and other Portuguese adventurers explored the sea routes to Goa and created a huge impact on the history of Goa as seen with multiple attractions existing in the state today. After the second capture of Goa by the Portuguese, Panjim was selected as an important military station, in consequence of which a new bastion with a breastwork was erected, and the castle of the Mohammedans, which had been partly burnt by Albuquerque, was repaired. The castle was placed under the command of Captain Pero de Freitas, who was stationed there with 200 sepoys to guard the city against any foreign attack on that side of the river. As a precautionary measure, all the ships that entered or left the river were subjected to the inspection of the captain, and obliged to obtain passports from him. In course of time a few houses were built in Panjim, in one of which a brother of the famous king, Bahadur Shah, is said to have lodged during his sojourn in Goa in 1533. About the same period, a chapel dedicated to Nossa Senhora da Conceição was erected there at the public expense, and was the first sacred edifice raised outside of the old city of Goa. This chapel, endowed in 1541 with an annual sum of £1 to 4, accruing from the rents of the property once belonging to some Hindu pagodas, was converted 13 years later into a parish church. About this period an asylum was also built there, and then a college. Residence for the viceroys and governors on their arrival from, or departure to, Portugal. Ordinarily, it was the rendezvous of fishermen and native sailors, who went there to haul up their boats on the margin of the river. In the middle of the 16th century, a great portion of this margin was bestowed as a grant on a lady named Isabella Fernandez, who raised there on a wall, causing so much inconvenience to its inhabitants that the government, in consequence of their repeated complaints during the 17th century, Panjim continued still to be inhabited chiefly by fishermen and ordinary artisans. During the reign of the most faithful King Joseph I, and the government of Viceroy the Count of Aga, the Senate transformed the building into the Viceregal Palace. 1760. It was a double-storied edifice, facing the south, and commanding a beautiful view on the river side. The entrance hall is adorned with the portraits of the viceroys and governors of Goa. The principal hall, which is towards the north, was called Sala de Dorsal, where was a large portrait of the reigning king is hung and the chief state ceremonials take place. On the ground floor there was, besides the civil and military departments of the Secretariat, a chapel in the vestry of which was seen the image of Christ which once belonged to the famous tribunal of the Inquisition. Goa was the first territorial possession of the Portuguese in Asia. Goa became the capital of the whole Portuguese Empire in Asia. It was granted the same civil privileges as Lisbon, reaching the climax of its prosperity between 1575 and 1600. In 1603 and 1639 the city was blockaded by Dutch fleets, though never captured, and in 1635 it was ravaged by an epidemic. In 1683 a Mughal army saved it from capture by Maratha raiders, and in 1739 the whole territory was again attacked by the Marathas and was saved only by the unexpected arrival of a new Portuguese viceroy with a fleet. During the 19th century, major events affecting the settlement were its temporary occupation by the British in 1809 as a result of the invasion of Portugal by Napoleon I, the governorship 1855-64 of Count de Torres Novas, who inaugurated a great number of improvements, and the military revolts of the second half of the century. Panjim with Rabindra and the old city of Goa constitutes the modern capital of Portuguese India, called Nova Goa or New Goa, though this name is commonly applied to Panjim alone. Its population numbered in 1827 about 9,000 souls, in 1851, 9,800, and in 1865, 14,134. At present it is estimated at 1.575 million. In the vernacular dialect of the country it was called Pongi, meaning probably arable land that cannot be inundated. Panjim was once a miserable place full of stagnant pools, and inhabited principally by fishermen and other poor people dwelling in huts.